40 states and made no mistakes. Everywhere he went, the people received him warmly and applauded his pronouncements. And I predict that he, aided by his charming wife Muriel, their lovely family, will make one of the greatest vice presidents that this nation has ever known. Thank you very much.
Then you help make me a candidate for the office of vice president. And by tomorrow morning, I hope that we can say that you helped make me vice president. But whatever there may be, I want you to know just this, that I just simply couldn't stay away from you any longer. And I served notice on one and all that works with me. I said, look, enough of this. I am going to the source of my strength. I'm going over and meet the people that I've worked with and been with. Can I just add this word? That I must say that President Johnson has truly touched the hearts of the American people. I think I sense the quality of his strength. I've watched him in the White House and I've worked with him in the Senate. And I noticed that whenever he was a little weary, which all of us on occasion become, that what he needed to revitalize his strength and his spirit was to go to the people. It's like that mythological god Atlas, who when he became weary and tired and lost his strength, he would come back to touch the earth and he would gain strength. And the President of the United States, who is the President of the people of the United States, not just of an area of land, not just of 50 geographical or legal jurisdictions called states, but he is the President of we, the people of the United States. Whenever that President went to the people, whenever he went out, for example, in these recent weeks, to the great cities and the farm areas of America, and he came out and he touched the people, literally touched them. He became strong, and he was filled with the love of his work and the love of his country. And what a joy it has been to work with him, because I too have sensed this same reaction. When I work closely with him, I feel the same inspiration. When I see the people with him, I feel the same encouragement. And I haven't any doubt at all but what this election will be a mandate, will be interpreted as a mandate to President Johnson to carry on, to do what he has told us he was going to do, to plan and to work and to give of himself for the future betterment and prosperity of this country, and above all, that which is closest to his heart, the security of this nation and the peace of the world, because that's his goal. Now, I want to thank the President for his kindness to us, and I speak now personally. President and Mrs. Johnson have been very dear friends to Muriel and Hubert Humphrey. We've known them just as people and as friends and as people that have worked together in government, in the Congress, and in the executive branch. And I can tell you this, that both the President and myself are mighty lucky, because his ladybird, my Muriel, what a pair. They've done wonderful. They've done wonderfully. And I just want the President to know that every time I heard of him going to the people, I just knew that things were going to be better the next day. Every time, those massive, great crowds that greeted him, they didn't come out of curiosity. They came out of affection and out of respect and admiration for the president. And they're going to be with him for many, many months and years to come. Now, in just a very few hours, in fact, Muriel, in case I didn't get around to tell you, in about 4 hours and 30 minutes, we are going to have to get up, and as if we're not now. And we are going to have to be packed because we're going to take a journey to Austin, Texas, and then to Johnson City and out to the LBJ Ranch. And we're going to have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon and evening and stay overnight with the president and Mrs. Johnson and his family. And then the next day, we're going to journey to Washington, where we hope to be able to quickly repack. And I'm going to give Muriel the surprise now of her life. We're maybe going to take a few days vacation, Muriel. In fact, I'm going to be downright lazy for a few days. I just sort of feel that if you don't mind, that I just kind of feel that on this occasion, if I don't deserve it, at least I need it. So with those words, can I just say that I speak to the people that represent the most active, the most effective, the most honorable political party in America, my people right out here in the state of Minnesota. And I want you to know that I've had some feelings about the new position that seems to be somewhere near at hand. I'm going to miss very much being the senator, one of the senators from this state. Bless your heart. But I'll never be away from you, and you'll never be away from me. This is our home. We'll always be with you, and we'll want to work with you, and we want to be close to you, and you help us by being close to us. And can I also add this, that I realize that this great victory is not just a victory of a party, because I think it is a victory, you know. I really do. I don't want to disturb anyone's sleep, but I do think it is a victory. This is a victory for the American people. And may I add that it is a victory that has been participated in not just by Democrats, but as these results show in precinct after precinct, in state after state, in county after county, in city after city, there have literally been millions of our fellow citizens who ordinarily were of Republican persuasion, that in this election saw fit, because of convictions, because of their interest in their country, because of their beliefs in certain principles, they saw fit to leave a party and to support the standard bearer of another party who is the President of the United States. I want to thank those people. I want to thank them very much. Well, Carl, I just reached back to get a hold of my governor's hand here. He's a stalwart. He's a wonderful, wonderful friend. And I want Governor Rolvog, and I want each and every member of this state administration, I want all of them to know how deeply grateful we are to you. And I want Secretary Freeman, who was our governor, to know how much Muriel and I and all of us appreciate his loyalty and his constant concern and help. And I do want my colleague in the Senate to know how everlastingly grateful I am for his generosity and his friendship. And all of these good friends that have worked with us, the congressmen, you know, we've had quite an election here in Minnesota. I want them to know, too, how much we appreciate their helpfulness. And now that it's over, I want Democrat, farmer laborite, and Republican alike, or Democrat and Republican alike, to know that once the ballots have been cast and the decision has been made, each of us has the responsibility not merely to serve a party, but above all to serve a country and to serve the people of this country regardless of party. So Carl, to you and to Sandy Keith and to Walter Mondale and to Joe Donovan and to Ron Anderson and to each and every one of you that are here, to Paul Rasmussen, I want you to know how much we appreciate all that you've done. With that, I must say that to my friends in the House, and I can't go down all the lists here. Of course, Don is around here. I got to get him in there, you see. But I want you to know that we're everlastingly grateful to you. Now, have a good time. It's early, you know. You don't really have to go to bed yet. You can still stay up and count those votes. If you don't mind, I think I'll take Muriel and our family, and we'll go back and try to get a little sleep. And tomorrow morning, we're going to board that plane called the Happy Warrior. And I'm going to fly down, we're going to fly down to Texas and see the victorious warrior, the President of the United States.
Hubert Humphrey has just completed his remarks to the Democrat Farmer Labor Party at the Radisson Hotel in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is the political group that Mr. Humphrey helped form in his early days of the political life in Minneapolis. Governor Karl Rolvog is on the left right now, Senator Humphrey, as he greets old friends, turns to his wife, Muriel, and they'll be off very shortly to Texas. This is CBS News correspondent Dave Dugan at the Radisson Hotel in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Senator Hubert Humphrey, 53, January becomes the Vice President of the United States and steps one heartbeat away from the presidency. VPA, or rather our CBS News informants in Alaska now believe that Johnson is the probable winner in Alaska, and that leaves only Arizona outstanding. Arizona still undecided, as well as those 5 Senate races, which are still too close to call, the races in California, Ohio, in Nevada, Arizona, and in Pennsylvania. Eric Severide and Martin Agronsky. We have a new Vice President of the United States. I gather you have some words about the Vice Presidency.
Well, we don't quite yet legally, technically have a new one, Walter. That's what President Johnson said about Mr. Humphrey, too, about an hour ago, the new Vice President. Actually, he's not yet a heartbeat away from the presidency. That is still the Speaker of the House, John McCormick. Since we have no Vice President, we won't have a Vice President. Mr. Humphrey will not be in that office till the Electoral College meets on December 14th. Anyway, he is to be it, and he has fulfilled a role in this campaign that normally is not regarded as of great importance. Most historians would say that vice presidential nominees don't affect the campaign much one way or another. Do you think this man has, Martin, you've been with him?
I think he has affected the campaign, and I think he's affected it in a rather important way, really. Everybody has said that one contribution he made to the campaign was to talk the issues. He's done that. I think he's gone beyond that. I think that he really began a dialogue with Mr. Goldwater, with Senator Goldwater. He began a dialogue that forced Goldwater to answer him. He never addressed himself to his opposite number, to Mr. Miller. He addressed himself always to Goldwater. He began it, in fact, if you remember at the convention when he started that little litany about all the progressive legislation others had voted for but ended, but not Senator Goldwater. And he carried that all through the country, working out a kind of a little routine that I suppose you could call singing along with Hubert, not Senator Goldwater echo that he always got from all of his audiences.
Did he work hard to conciliate businessmen, many of whom used to be fearful of him?
He did. He felt that he had a certain image as being too liberal, apparently, to live down. He's very conscious of it. He did live it down. He lived it down with businessmen as he lived down the same image, you know, in the Senate of the United States, where he's become a pucka member of the establishment, where he's learned not to talk too much, which has always been something he was very conscious of. He's learned to curb his tongue. He's learned to go along. He's learned the Sam Rayburn dictum, I guess. If you want to get along, you've got to go along.
Do you think he'll be, as a very active man, frustrated in the vice presidency?
Well, he's the kind of a man you imagine would be frustrated in the vice presidency, except for this, Eric, that I've talked to him about his concept of the vice presidency and about President Johnson's concept of what he would do as vice president. And if it works out the way he anticipates that it will, I think it'll be sufficiently active even for Mr. Humphrey. I know, for example, he's told me that, he told me some weeks ago that if the Labour government won in England, which they've now done, that he intends to go to London as representative of the president. That's one mission he's going to undertake. He intends to undertake a mission to Italy. I think that the president has in mind that he'll take over many of the ceremonial duties which now devolve on the president. He'll use him as a kind of a substitute president in that sense. And really, I think that the way Mr. Humphrey is going to function as vice president will satisfy even his insatiable desire for activity.
Well, Martin, I remember when Senator Humphrey first came to Washington. I remember he met a dinner party at that wonderful old lady, Mrs. Daisy Heron.
Yes.
He was quite contemptuous then of the way the Senate was run, in the sense that he objected to the seniority rules. He said, you don't have to have any brains to get power in the United States Senate. You just have to live long enough. He said, I'm only 39 years old. Well, he's lived long enough now. He's had the power in the Senate and used that and gone much higher. Now back to Walter Cronkite.
It'd be interesting to note, gentlemen, too, that with Senator Humphrey becoming vice president in January and Bob Kennedy going to the United States Senate, there might be a new power struggle brewing in the Democratic Party looking forward to 1972 when the presidency will be open.
One day I should think this would happen. I would think the first thing we will see develop will be that Mr. Kennedy, who's come into New York, will end up as the real party leader in this state, perhaps above Mayor Wagner.
Campaign 64, CBS News coverage of the presidential election will continue in just a moment. The Lyndon B. Johnson landslide of November 3rd, 1964, recorded on our CBS News tabular boards. In popular vote, 83% of the vote in. Johnson and Humphrey, 35.5 million. Senator Goldwater and Congressman Miller, 22 million. The percentage looks like it's holding right at that 62% that our pollster Lewis Harris and others had predicted. And Senator Goldwater, 38%. An electoral vote, 483 electoral votes for Lyndon Johnson. 3 are probable. Those are the votes in Alaska, which we recorded a moment ago. Senator Goldwater has 47 electoral votes that he amassed in those 5 southern states, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina, the only 5 states that he carried. He carried none in the East, in the Midwest, or in the western sections of the United States, although he may still get one there. Arizona is outstanding as a 50-50 call by vote profile analysis as of this moment. This is Walter Cronkite at CBS News Election Headquarters. The big story at this hour is the senatorial races, which are still open. 5 very, very close races involving some prominent leaders in the political life of this nation, and Bob Trout can give us a rundown of those 5 states. Bob?
Walter, they're the same 5 states. There is, for example, Ohio, where Robert Taft, Jr. is defeating Democratic Senator Stephen Young, but not doing it quickly enough for us to be able to say that he's definitely done it. Senator Frank Lausche and Senator Stephen Young refused to walk down the aisle together when the Senate convened in January 1959, and new senators went through the ceremony of being sworn in, even though both of them were Democrats. They don't get along very well together, and nobody in Washington could ever remember when that had happened before. If Robert Taft goes to Washington as a Republican senator, he'll probably go down the aisle with Democratic Senator Lausche. In Arizona, 73% of the vote is in, mostly from places like Phoenix and Tucson. Outstanding areas still to be heard from are in the north and the east, where many of the voters are Indians, miners, and ranchers, and are generally Democratic Party voters. But Arizona experts feel that it's unlikely that Roy Elson there, the Democrat, can overtake the old-time Goldwater friend, Republican Governor Paul Fannin, who is running for Senator Goldwater's seat, the one that he is vacating. In Pennsylvania, it's still a question of whether Miss Genevieve Blatt, the Democrat, can somehow amass enough votes to get a narrow victory over Republican Senator Hugh Scott, and it doesn't seem likely that she'll be able to do it. Close race there, though, too. And this is the latest situation in California. The race for the Senate there appears to be balanced on the head of a pin, far, far too close to call. With 92% of the VPA model points in, it looks this way. First, by income, George Murphy holds a 63 to 37 lead among upper income people, and Democratic Senator Pierre Salinger has an 85 to 15% among lower income groups. The middle income, largest group in population, shows George Murphy ahead by a narrow range, 51 to 49. So the income groups balance almost to the 50-50 division. When the race is analyzed by areas, Senator Salinger holds a heavy 65 to 35% lead in the metropolitan areas, while every other subdivision shows a much closer race with George Murphy in the lead. For example, Murphy is ahead in the farm area 58 to 42. In the small towns, he's ahead 54 to 46, but Walter, I'm told you want the air back, so I'll stop this analysis right now.
Well, Bob, it just looked as if perhaps we were going to see President Johnson as he left the auditorium in Austin again, but we haven't had word from that yet. We might take a quick look at some of these split votes tonight, because it has been a rather remarkable record, another one of the remarkable things on this election night. For instance, in New York, where President Johnson carried New York State by 69%. He quite obviously pulled in Robert Kennedy to the senatorial win over the incumbent Republican Keating. Senator Kennedy had 54%, so it was 69 Johnson to 54 in New York. In Pennsylvania, Lyndon Johnson had a whopping 65% of the vote there, and he may be pulling Miss Genevieve Blatt to a victory there, although it looks like she's going to lose out to Senator Hugh Scott, but it was very close. Senator Scott almost went down to defeat in the Johnson landslide in Pennsylvania. In Ohio, Lyndon Johnson got 63% of the vote, and the incumbent Senator Stephen Young is just holding on at 50% of the vote, and with Robert Taft holding a narrow lead there. In Michigan, Senator Johnson could not quite pull in Neil Stabler to the governorship there. 68% of the vote he got in Michigan, but Neil Stabler fell by the wayside, and Governor Romney won in Michigan. Stabler got 45% of the vote. In Illinois, Lyndon Johnson got 60% of the vote, and Otto Kerner, the incumbent governor, was carried in on his coattails with a 53% margin to defeat Mr. Percy, Chuck Percy, the young Republican on whom the Republican moderates had so much faith and hope. In Texas, Lyndon Johnson won with 64% of the vote, and Ralph Yarborough, the incumbent senator, went in with 57% of the vote. Although a sizable margin for Yarborough, much larger than it had been anticipated he would get against the strong Republican senatorial contender George Bush. In Arizona, Lyndon Johnson is still at just about 50% of the vote. That race is too close for us to call on the basis of our VPA precinct sampled. And the same thing is true in the senatorial race with Roy Eltson and Governor Paul Fannin very close, too close to call. But the Democratic candidate for the governorship there won that state seat from Governor Fannin, who vacated it to make the race for the Senate with 54% of the vote. It may be a case there of the governor pulling in the president in Arizona. Too close to call, though, in that presidential race. In California, Lyndon Johnson had a whopping 61% victory, but Pierre Salinger, the incumbent senator, is just hanging in there right now with George Murphy, the Republican contender, running ahead. And the Associated Press says that George Murphy has won. Our vote profile analysis, as Bob Trout told you just a moment ago, certainly indicates, however, that the race is too close to call at this particular moment. We'll return with more results after a pause for station identification.
See a post-election.
Back at our CBS News election headquarters in New York, where we've been recording this landslide victory for President Johnson tonight, 83% of the popular vote in. We haven't added very many votes to that since the last time we called, and there won't be a great number added the rest of this night. Most of that 17% that's outstanding are from very remote areas, and they'll come in very slowly. 35,800,000 votes for Johnson, 22,900,000 votes for Goldwater. 61% of the vote now for Johnson and Humphrey, and 39% for Goldwater. That drops that percentage down 1% from where it was a moment ago. It had been holding up at about 62. If it drops very much further, it may rob President Johnson of that greatest victory of all time in an American presidential race. 60.8 that Franklin Delano Roosevelt ran up against Alf Landon in 1936 is the record. Johnson just a little above that at this particular moment. And that will be one that he'll be watching very closely, because he would obviously like to have that record unto himself. We still have those 5 outstanding races in the Senate, and we're going to keep an eye on those for the next half hour or so. Campaign 64, CBS News coverage of the presidential election, will continue in just a moment. You know, gentlemen, we've heard victory statements and concession statements from a lot of the candidates tonight. The briefest one we didn't get to hear, unfortunately. That was from Bud Wilkinson, the former great football coach at the University of Oklahoma, who said to Fred Harris, who won the Senate seat down there, "I congratulate Senator Harris." Nice four-word statement. Of course, we didn't get that one, but by the time we got our television cameras warmed up, I suppose, Bud Wilkinson had gone to bed. If we spent as much time thanking everybody who helped us around here in CBS, we'd be on the air far longer than any of the candidates have been on tonight, and that's quite a while. Harry?
Walter, we do have one late bulletin here. It says that since it's after midnight, it's your birthday, and Roger and I thought we'd wait till tomorrow to comment on that.
You're going to bed without making any comments on it, and I think I shall too. You know, we haven't had an opportunity here tonight. This hour comes, of course, every election night when we do have this opportunity. This is the hour at our election headquarters, and it's coming much earlier than it ever has before, thanks to that fantastic job that Network Election Service has done tonight in building up the total vote far earlier than ever before, and the vote profile analysis is done in giving us the indicated winners in all of these states except those 5 outstanding senatorial races and the presidential race in Arizona. But we do have the opportunity now for you fellows to ask each other any questions that may have occurred, from the gubernatorial desk to the senatorial desk, or the presidential desk to Eric and Martin Negronsky at the analysis desk. Anything outstanding?
Walter?
Mike?
Doesn't George Romney now emerge as the dominant Republican in that party? After all, with a 55% win in the state of Michigan in spite of the fact that Lyndon Johnson did as well as he did in that state. And with Charles Percy losing in Illinois and with Bob Taft evidently winning, but barely winning, doesn't it look as though this 57-year-old man who doesn't swear, nor drink, nor smoke, but win elections, doesn't it make him look like the top Republican?
My only comment about that would be, and I'd like to know whether Eric agrees with me, that at 57, we've got to think in terms of an incumbent president in 68. That's 4 years from now. 61, that's a little older than our average first-term attempts at the presidency. And Bob Taft is a little bit younger than that in Ohio. It's just a question, I think, a kind of a race in age, perhaps between the two of them. What would you say, Eric?
I suppose age would be some handicap to Governor Romney, but he's a terribly vigorous 57-year-old man. He's a lot younger at that age than most of us are, some years less than that.
Well, if you've ever seen him take those early morning runs he takes, he runs several miles every morning, and I don't think there are many of us around here who could keep up with him on that.
Walter, do you see any particular point to be made of the fact that Mr. Goldwater's popular vote minority is so much greater than his electoral vote minority? The electoral vote, he has only about 9-10%. The other is going to run apparently about 38%. There's still going to be somewhere around 24-25 million Americans who voted for Mr. Goldwater, in spite of the state breakdown.
No question about that. I have over here, it just happens in front of me. I've had it in front of me all evening, haven't had a chance to use it. I'm glad you led into that. Some comparisons on the large votes in electoral vote as compared to popular vote. And I want to take a half a second to look at it. Half a second, as we refer to it in television, usually runs on to 5 or 6 minutes, so be prepared. But in that Roosevelt landslide of 1936, Landon only got 2% of the electoral vote, 2%, but he got 38% of the popular vote, which just about is what adding up here. In the 1928 Hoover-Smith race, which is also frequently recorded as one of the very close ones, Smith got 16% of the electoral vote, but racked up 41% of the popular vote, which is, again, a pretty good margin. And Roosevelt-Hoover was about the same thing in 1932, 89% for Roosevelt in the electoral vote. That is only 11% for Hoover, but Hoover got 41%. So this runs that way quite frequently.
It does. That's the artificial nature of the electoral state vote. There are several little points, I think, as we're getting this very late in the hour, and I'm sure only die-hard political aficionados are still listening. Several little points that might be made in a kind of summary. One is that no apathy among the voters showed at all. It really never does. It's always predicted, or often is. It doesn't happen. They get bored with campaigns, but not with that right to vote. I think another characteristic of this election has been a discrimination by individual voters, a ticket splitting, which ran about 40% 4 years ago, probably go even higher this time. This means people do make a very serious study of these things. They are not as indifferent as we frequently say. Another thing is the general rise in degree of the liberal philosophy, if we can call it that we have to categorize, in the other races, Senate and House, on the national level, where new men have been come in, replace other people. From most of the states we've looked at, it seems to be a general trend in the liberal direction. This is a country with a very deep and old liberal tradition, and Mr. Goldwater has denounced liberalism generally, and apparently rationalized or justified extremism. I don't think people have told the president in this enormous endorsement what they specifically want him to do about any problems, whether it's negotiating with the Russians or fighting Vietnam or things at home. But I suppose it comes down to a vote of confidence in a man to persistently, intelligently, and prudently try to solve those problems with his own best judgment, or at least to ameliorate them. I think that's about all one can say about it.
Eric, it's also, I think, noteworthy that the silent vote didn't apparently show up. We always hear about a silent vote always in these elections, and we never really ever shows up, at least not since polling has become a pretty accurate measure of the possible vote. Harry, Roger, do you have any idea what happened to the silent vote?
I don't think there was one. I think that it's like when I came back from Manila after Adlai Stevenson had run, everybody was saying that the reason that Governor Stevenson didn't do better than he had is because he was too intelligent. He was too high above the level of the average voter. And taxi drivers, milkmen, college professors all said, I understand this fellow, but the other guy doesn't. It's just that there weren't enough of them. And I think that the people who like Senator Goldwater were perfectly vocal about it. In fact, the very opposite of silent. If there was a silent vote, it belonged to President Johnson.
It has occurred to me in the evening, I just wonder what's on the conservative American's mind, the conservative voter. I wonder if he thinks after this massive rejection of the conservative point of view that he and his followers have truly gotten a fair test. You remember when Senator Goldwater was nominated, the conservative wing of the party said, finally, after, what has it been, 40 years, we've really got a true conservative. Before we've fudged it. We've had a moderate here, he's been a little left of center, a little right of center, but the whole history of the Republican Party in this modern age has been one of moderation. They finally gave it to a true conservative, and now he's had his chance. I just wonder now whether this will be considered by conservatives as a true test, or will they say that there were circumstances, extenuating circumstances, the assassination. It really wasn't a true test. Let's go at it again in '68.
Well, undoubtedly part of it is going to be the fact that the press will again be alleged to have been so solidly against Senator Goldwater that his attempt was scuttled. This charge has been made already, and Denison Kitchell, of course, the campaign director for Goldwater, said earlier this evening that we'd be trying again in 4 years. So apparently they're not
call it a first round.
In the few short weeks I was out, about 6 or 7 weeks, I don't think I've gotten myself more personal abuse directed at me. We come into an airport and get off the plane and take our portable typewriter and form a line to wait to hear what the senator or the president would say. And inevitably, people in the crowd would come up with the finger. You tell the truth. Editorialize in our favor, why don't you? All over the country, we got that. And it all began, you know, in San Francisco, that great full-throated cry when Dwight Eisenhower called out the sensation-seeking columnists.
You know, if there were any way to cut off the mail, I would like to, because I can say that undoubtedly we're going to get a lot of mail saying that we showed considerable glee as we reported the Johnson landslide tonight. But I'd like to make it note here that this always happens after every election by whichever side loses, and undoubtedly it's because there is a certain excitement in the way these figures come in. You've got to report it with some excitement, and it happens every election year from the losers. We hear whether they're Democratic or they're Republican, we have shown glee over the winning side. This isn't glee, it's excitement and interest in the way the race is going.
You know, Walter...
may I come right back to you in a moment, Martin? We're going to pause for a second here. Campaign 64, CBS News coverage of the presidential election will continue in just a moment. United Press International is now saying that Senator Hugh Scott has won re-election to the U.S. Senate over Democratic challenger Genevieve Blatt in Pennsylvania. That means that one or the other of the press services now declared Scott the winner in Pennsylvania, Taft the winner in Ohio, and Murphy the winner in California. Republicans all in those close races. However, our vote profile analysis still says that those races, as well as those still open in Arizona and Nevada, are too close to call. Martin Gronsky, you were about to have an observation for us on this matter.
Walter, I was going to follow up what Roger said about the reaction at the San Francisco convention when Mr. Eisenhower made that statement about the press and everyone roared approval about how we distorted the Republican position. And just tonight, Roger, I called Senator Thurmond in South Carolina and got exactly the same rundown, the same position that was expressed in this way by Mr. Eisenhower, has been expressed that we've all run into on the campaign trail. He said that, I said, well, what has happened, do you think? And his answer to me was that the leftist press and networks, he threw us all into it, have distorted the whole Republican position, the whole Goldwater position. You've never reported fairly on anything that he said. You've not permitted the people to know the truth. Well, when I pointed out to him that Mr. Goldwater and Mr. Miller had gone all through the country and had talked to the people themselves and presumably had given them the truth, he said, it doesn't matter. You still misrepresented everything. They never had a chance to know what it was. Now, that's one out we're going to have constantly on the conservative side on what has really happened. And of course, it raises, too, the question of what happens now to the Republican Party. Now, you know you can call a meeting of the Republican National Committee. One is scheduled in January, and an effort could be made then by the liberals, the moderates, the conservatives who regard Senator Goldwater himself as a radical to take the party back again. Now, can they succeed? Do they have the strength, do you think, Eric? I don't know.
I think it'll take a long time to thrash it out. These things go through quite a number of innings. If, as Mr. Kitchell, Mr. Goldwater campaign manager, said, they're going to try again, either with, I don't know what it means with Mr. Goldwater himself, but certainly with a conservative of his kind, if they're going to make that kind of effort, a determined one, and they hold a lot of party offices and machinery now, then I would think, on the basis of this overwhelming repudiation, that this party really will be split. It could be formally split, and part of it take another name. Something of that kind could happen. That could lead the way to its dissolution.
Well,
I'd like to say a word in behalf of Bill Scranton.
Roger?
Yeah.
That's one of the finest teases we've had all evening. We'll return to CBS News Election Headquarters with further coverage of the 1964 results in just a moment. Roger, you've either had 1 minute to forget what you were going to say or to consolidate your pitch for Bill Scranton.
Well, I'll get started, and Lyndon Johnson will walk out of the auditorium. No,
I wouldn't take bets against it.
All I wanted to mention was that Scranton fought Goldwater pretty hard in San Francisco, and then he came back to Pennsylvania and bit his lip a couple times and campaigned for Goldwater. Stumped the state for him and protected his tracks and covered his flanks with the conservatives on one side and the liberals on the other. It just seems to me that he's not in terrible shape.
Is there anybody who's going to say a word for Harold Stassen?
Well,
Have to wait for the next convention for that one. The word is
Harold Stassen would, I suppose.
Yeah. What's the order? Is there any order?
Yeah.
Bob Trout, can you give us a quick rundown now on those outstanding Senate races, please?
Well, Walter, before I do, suppose I just sort of finish off that little discussion by reminding all my friends and colleagues that it's just 44 months until the next political convention. California is the first state we should look at, though. Is my microphone on?
Yes, I think so.
Do you hear me?
Oh,
good. I'm glad somebody hears me. California is the first state we should look at in this list of the 5 states which so far still have not been decided. And there are some complications in California, too. In San Diego County, we're told, a number of precincts are much slower than usual in counting their ballots because the machines that count the votes have broken down and now the counting is being done by hand. It's believed that many of these late reporting precincts would normally favor a Republican candidate, and there's another question to be answered, too. Some 100,000 absentee ballots in Los Angeles County. It's believed they won't be counted until sometime tomorrow. And the way they go, or could go, could determine the outcome of the extremely close race between Senator Salinger and George Murphy. In Pennsylvania, as we know, Senator Hugh Scott is maintaining his narrow lead over Miss Genevieve Blatt, the Democratic challenger in Nevada. It's still a question of whether the Republican Lieutenant Governor Paul Laxalt can make quite enough headway to overcome the lead of the Democratic Senator Howard Cannon. In Ohio, many people think that Robert Taft Jr. has just about won his race to unseat Senator Stephen Young after one term as a Democratic senator. And in Arizona, again, we're waiting to find out whether Roy Elson, the administrative assistant to Senator Carl Hayden, can overcome the lead and overtake Republican Governor Paul Fannin for the seat that Senator Goldwater is leaving.
Those races are going to be perhaps hours in their final determination. And as we said, although the press services believe that winners can be declared in California, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, all Republicans, according to them, our vote profile analysis says that it is far too close to call at this hour. Martin, you were about to add something a moment ago, weren't you, when I
Well,
had to go out of that commercial?
I was just talking over with Eric Waller, the prospect for the Republican Party, who would take it over. And in the interval, we were both recollecting that in 1936, when Landon was smashingly defeated, and the Republicans generally in the Congress and all through the country were defeated in a sense even worse than they have been this time. But the Republican Party survived it, and that perhaps one takes too extreme a view if one thinks that the Republican Party would necessarily split if it were if the moderates came back and the extremists objected to it, or the people, the faction led by Goldwater, objected. I think there's another facet to the thing too that I derive from my knowledge of Senator Goldwater, from watching him and talking to him over a long period of time, and that is that I don't think that the senator himself is inclined, I wouldn't think that he would be inclined to remain extremely active, to attempt to reassert his control of the party. What do you think, Eric?
That is my own impression of him. I don't think he would go through this again, especially if there were long odds against him next time. I can't imagine that. He would be 59 years old. He loves life. He has had a good life. He enjoys his family, his home state. It's hard for me to think that he would do that.
Eric, excuse me a moment,
Yes,
but
Wallace.
George Murphy out in Los Angeles, I understand, is appearing at his headquarters, and here he is.
Wait a minute now. Let's not get carried away with this. This is not finished yet, but I'm glad to report that I haven't got any voice left. I've made over 1,200 speeches, my friend, and we're doing fine. So you listen as quiet as a mouse, and you may hear. We've just talked with Ben Height's office, and one of the things that was of concern was a mix-up where 8 bulletins came out showing that Mr. Salinger was leading in Los Angeles County, and then the 9th one suddenly showed that I was leading. Somebody's kicked the wire again. We'll never get that man on the moon with this kind of electronics going on here. But I'm glad to tell you that the last report from Ben Height's office 10 minutes ago said that it looked as though we would win Los Angeles County by 200,000. San Diego County, people who are trustworthy down there assure us that we'll have 55 to 65,000 in San Diego County, and we should have another. We should have another 60 to 65,000 out of Orange County. As I stand here, I look at my co-chairman from Orange County, Andy Devine, and Andy, and with him one of my great backers down there, Dick Richards, and they both assure me that it'll be more than 65,000 out of Orange County. As a matter of fact, they said today if they could get the whole United States to react like Orange County, that Republicans would win everywhere.
That was George Murphy, the former movie star and dancer who is leading in the Senate race in California, leading over Pierre Salinger with 72% of the vote counted in California. We should make note here, I think, that Senator Barry Goldwater went to bed in his home at Camelback in Phoenix, Arizona some time ago, announcing that he would have no statement to make until 10 o'clock tomorrow, Phoenix, Arizona time. That's noon, and CBS television will, of course, carry Senator Goldwater's statement at noon Eastern Standard Time tomorrow when he plans to make it. President Johnson, with a landslide victory behind him, did not wait for a concession from Senator Goldwater and broke recent tradition to make his victory statement at Austin a short while ago, as you saw. Tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, we at CBS News are going to take a look at what happened last night. A considered view at that time of some of the things we have been telling you tonight. And by then, perhaps we'll know how those 5 close races have come out in the Senate. 5 races in Arizona, Arizona, California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. All of them still much too close to call. Let's take one final look now at our big boards up there. 85% of the popular vote in, 36.5 million votes for Johnson and Humphrey, 23,335,000 for Goldwater and Miller. It looks like a Johnson-Humphrey victory by about a 61% margin. It may be sometime tomorrow before we know definitely whether Lyndon Johnson won his victory as the greatest ever in American presidential politics, greater than the 60.8 that President Roosevelt defeated Alf Landon in 1936. In electoral votes, it was a whopping victory, too, for Johnson, 486 electoral votes to Senator Goldwater's 47. Goldwater carrying only 5 states, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina. Possibly a 6th will be added when we finally can say how Arizona, his own home state, has gone. In the Senate, there were 35 races up this year, and with several of them still outstanding, as we have reported to you, the figures now look like this. The Democrats have elected 26 of those 35 senators. The Republicans have elected 3 and probably elected a 4th. The new makeup of the Congress with the holdovers would be 66 Democratic senators, 29 Republican senators, a good margin for the Democrats, but still with some 5 races to go. In the gubernatorial races, there were 25 state houses at stake in this election. Of those, the Democrats have won 17, the Republicans have won 5. With their holdover governors, it means that the Democrats will be in control of a heavy majority of the state houses across the nation, 33 to 14 for the Republicans. A rather important figure when it's considered that in many states reapportionment will be a question up before the new legislatures, and this Democratic sweep has brought in a Democratic legislature in many states where the Republicans have been in control for many years. New York and Indiana are particular cases in point. In the House races, the Democrats have won 295 seats, the Republicans 140. That would be the makeup of the House of Representatives in the 89th Congress meeting in January. It will give President Johnson a considerably larger working margin than he had in the 88th Congress, which was 254 to 176, some almost 40 seats, 41 seats more than he had in the last Congress. That is the way the election 1964 has gone. Tomorrow evening, we remind you, at 7:30, we will do a wrap-up of what happened last night. This is Walter Cronkite speaking from our CBS News election headquarters on behalf of all of us who have participated tonight in reporting these returns to you, not only those who have been on camera, Mike Wallace and Roger Mudd and Harry Reasoner, and Bob Trout, and Eric Severide, Martin Negronsky, but the hundreds of CBS News employees who have been working so loyally behind the scenes, and all of those in the Network Election Service, this new service that brought you the returns faster than they have ever been brought before. We say thank you for being with us, and good night.
Campaign 64, Election Night, has been brought to you by the Institute of Life Insurance, on behalf of the life insurance companies in America and their agents, and by Pell Mell, a cigarette for people who are particular about taste. This is the CBS Television Network.